Hi everyone, my name is Charisse and welcome to Code with Charisse. In this tutorial, we'll be going over how to use the AWS SDK with Go. SDKs allow us to use programming languages like Go to interact with AWS services like S3, DynamoDB, and many more. This makes the SDK a very useful tool and skill to have to automate AWS actions. Being able to automate AWS actions is a key skill for any job that involves working with the cloud. So if you want to learn more about automating tasks in the cloud, then continue watching. Okay, so our first step here is going to be to create a new Go package by using the go mod command. So I'll run that now. Okay, this now gives us our go.mod file. Now we'll just create a main.go file. All right, so we have an empty main.go file, which we will now add our SDK code to. It's gonna go very fast, but I'll go over what each line means after I've completed the file, okay? Okay, now that I have finished writing the code, I'm just gonna run go mod tidy to download these packages. Looks like we have an error here. So let's just look. Oh, I have an issue right here. This should be for go. And I'll run that again. Now that we've downloaded all the packages that we need, all of the red squiggly lines have disappeared. So let's now go over what this file actually does. So the first couple lines are pretty stereotypical for Go programs. We have a package declaration here, and then we're importing some important packages. And to really have a understanding of what these packages do, I'll just skip to the main function to show how they're actually used, okay? So the first thing we do is we're gonna use the config package to configure the AWS environment that will be running our SDK in. So in this case, I'm just loading the default configuration. So this load default config will basically search for different kinds of credentials in the following order. First, it will find the environment variables. And if those environment variables don't exist, it will look for credentials in the AWS Credentials file. And if that doesn't exist, then it will go to the AWS config file. And then lastly, if that one doesn't exist, it will look at the instance profile that's attached to an EC2 instance if your SDK code is running on an EC2 instance. So in this case, I'm running it on my own machine, so it's able to find the credentials from the environment variables. Next, it just checks for errors, and assuming that there are no errors, it goes to the next part, which is to set up the S3 client. So the client is basically how you interact with different services. In this case, we want to interact with the S3 service, so we need to get the client for S3, and this is the syntax that you'll use. Next, we're going to perform some actions on the S3 service, and the action we want to perform is to list the objects in a specific bucket. So we'll see we're using the client to list objects using the version 2 of the Go SDK. There are 2 versions, but for this tutorial, I've stuck with version 2 because that's the latest one. And next, it just takes a context. In this case, it's going to be empty, and we are going to also pass the parameters needed. So in this case, it needs the name of the bucket, and that bucket is going to be my bucket F4B7. So this is a bucket that exists in my account, but in your case, you're going to be taking another bucket that exists in your account and then add the name of that bucket here. And here we're using that AWS package. So you can see we have the AWS package here. We are using it to convert it to a format that the Go SDK can use. So once that's done, if there's any errors, it will log them. Otherwise, it moves on to the last part, which is the most interesting. So lastly, we're just going to loop over the results of that call. So it gives us an output, and we're just going to loop over the results, and we're just going to print the object key as well as the object size. So it's a very simple program, but gives you a very good understanding of how to use the Go SDK. Right, so now let's see this in action. So we've already downloaded the required Go packages. So the next thing we'll do is just run the Go build command to just make sure we have no errors. Okay, we have no errors here, and we've also created a main file, which we can just execute by running ./main. Okay, so in my case, everything works as expected because I've already set up my AWS credentials, but if you don't have your credentials set up here, then this won't work and you'll get an error. But in my case, I've set up the credentials, so we're able to list all of the objects in this bucket as well as their sizes. I hope this gives you a really simple introduction to using the AWS SDK for Go. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. See you next week.